Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Mindy Eggen, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I took this stencil and turned it into a home decor piece. The stencil that I'm going to be using today is the Color Layering Holiday Neighborhood. So there are three pieces to the stencil set, and they all layer together to create this beautiful little Christmas village. So I'm starting with a piece of Deluxe white cardstock from Hero Arts that is about 5.5 by 8.5. I folded up a piece of Post-it tape and put it on the back so it's held down onto my work surface with that Post-it tape. I'm going to start with the first layer of the stencil. They are all labeled down in the bottom left-hand corner, 1, 2, and 3, so you know which one to start with. And I'm going to just hold that first layer down with my Post-it tape. Now I'm going to be bringing in my ink to do the ink blending. So when I originally did this, or I actually played with a few different color combinations, and I really liked the idea of reds and greens because it kind of reminded me of like Santa's workshop, but I really didn't want to go quite that bright of a green or red. So I'm starting with moss, which is a really pretty, almost like a forest type of green. So I started with that on the first layer using my blending brush to add that color to the open areas of the stencil. I'm going to make sure to just go in right to left and left to right over those open areas so that I get complete coverage. Once I have this first layer done, before I remove that stencil, I am taking a pen and I'm coloring in those little squares. Those squares are going to help me line up the remaining stencils. You could also kind of eyeball it, by lining up the images with what you already have ink blended, or you could have inked up those squares with your blending brush, but I often forget to do that. So I just used a pen. Next, I'm bringing in the second layer of the stencil, lined up those squares, held that down with the Post-it tape, and this time I'm coming in with raspberry jam. I almost used crimson, but I wanted something just a little darker and just had a different tone to it. And I'm really happy with how this color looks with the moss ink. So I went around the whole area of the stencil for that, totally loving how this looks. And for the third layer of the stencil, I'm going to be using Forever Green, which is quite a few shades darker than moss. Now, of course, if you don't have a darker green, you could always do moss or your first green, just a little bit more heavy-handed. But I really like the tone of the Forever Green. Also, keep in mind that some of these colors are overlapping each other or going on top of another color. So depending what colors you use, that may change the outlook of your color scheme. Another thing you could possibly do is mask off certain areas so you could have a whole bunch of different colored houses. I decided to just go with one color per stencil to keep it really easy. I was playing with a few different ideas, and I did this one on kind of this craft colored cardstock. I believe this is Sand from Hero Arts. Looks really great on this too. Kind of has more of that country style home feeling to it, but I'm not going to use that one today. I'm going to use the white one. I'm going to create a frame for my piece, and to do that, I have a piece of cardstock that is cut to 6 3/4 by 5 1/4, and I used the nesting rectangle dies to die cut out a frame. So that's going to fit nicely over my image, but I want to create a double frame. So I die cut out, or I trimmed out another piece of cardstock measuring that same size, brought in that first frame, and I'm bringing in one of the nested rectangles that's a little bit smaller. So I'm using my first frame as a guide so I can create kind of this double framed look that's going to layer on top of each other. The reason I chose this 6 3/4 by 5 1/4 is because that's the size of the actual stencil. So I really wanted to keep as much of that village in frame as I could without cutting any of it off. I'm going to take that stencil design and I'm trimming this down to be that same measurement, the 6 3/4 by 5 1/4. If I have misspoken on my measurements, I will make sure to note it at the top, but I'm pretty sure that's what my sizes were. So I just used my paper trimmer, and I'm kind of using the lines left from my ink blending to help get that in that size that I needed. Another thing I like to do with my frames when I do something like this is I like to layer it with foam tape. So I am just trimming down my foam tape into thin strips, and I'm going to go all the way around the edges. I apologize if I'm stumbling over my words. I am really stuffed up and sick right now, so my brain isn't quite getting all the words out that I need it to, but hopefully you're able to follow along with this. I took that second frame, added foam tape to this as well, so each layer is going to pop up a little bit from the other. Now I'm going to start adding decorations and sentiments. Well, I'm going to start die cutting them first. So I brought out my Hero Arts compact cutter. The sentiment I'm using is called, or it's going to say Happy Holidays, and that comes from the Christmas Holidays Stampin' Cut XL set. I started by die cutting out the shadow layer from Vellum. Then I have this sprig that's going to create kind of a swag at the top of my home decor piece. This comes from the Winter Foliage Stampin' Cut XL. I'm die cutting that. I'm going to do 2 of them from Pesto cardstock. And then I also have this bow, which is one of my all-time favorite bows. I love how loopy it is. And I'm going to die cut that from some silver glitter cardstock. This comes from the Holly Berries Stampin' Cut XL set. Then I'll take the Happy Holidays, die cut that from gold glitter cardstock, and I'm also going to die cut it about 4 or 5 more times from white cardstock. The extra die cut words out of the white cardstock is going to help layer up my sentiment to really create some separation from the background. So right now I have everything die cut out and kind of laid out the way it is going to look. And then I could start kind of gluing some of these pieces together. I'm going to start with the Happy Holidays. I already added the gold glitter die cut word to 1 layer of white cardstock, and I added that over the top of my vellum piece. And then I have this other Happy Holidays that I layered together about 2 to 3 more times. I'm adding liquid glue to the top of those letters so I can flip it around and add it to the back of the vellum. This is where I really wanted that dimension because I really want to create that separation. I don't want the center of my card to be too clustered, I guess is the word that's coming to mind right now. I'm going to add a little bit of ink to my swag. So this is the moss ink that I'm adding with a mini blending brush. The moss just wasn't standing out enough for me, so I brought in the Forever Green, just sporadically adding that to the ends. I didn't want the whole thing covered, just little bits and pieces, and I'll do that to both of my branches here. And then I'm going to be adding splatters to both my background and these branches. Now, if you remember, or if you're familiar with the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kits, in one of them, we got this white acrylic spray, which is amazing for white splatter. So I just made sure to shake it up really well. And I'm going to just take the top off and add a few drops to my work surface. I'm going to mix that with some water, pick it up with my paintbrush, and then add those splatters to the branches and also the background. Another way you can get some smaller splatters, kind of some finer splatters, is by taking your craft pick, make sure that it's extended out, adding a little bit of that mixture to your craft pick and flicking your paintbrush off of that. It's going to get you just a really nice mist of that white splatter. I made sure that panel was dry, and then I added those folded pieces of Post-it tape to the back of this panel just to make sure that this doesn't move or kind of bow in any way while I'm adding all of my layers to this. I'm going to start with the frame. So I made sure that I lined it up and I had the correct frame going down first. This is the thicker frame. I'm going to remove the backing of that foam tape, and then I'm going to line it up with the left-hand side and kind of let it just gently fall over my background. I don't want to pull these tight because that can make your paper warp. Then I'm going to take my second frame, which has the smaller kind of frame to it, the skinnier sides, and I'm going to remove the backing of that foam tape and place it over the top. Then I can just pick this up from my work surface, and there are some areas where I, kind of went a little too far, so I had some edges sticking out. I'm just going to take my scissors and trim that down so everything looks nice and flush. Then I'll add my sentiment. So I placed some liquid glue on the back of all of those letters, and this is going to go right in the center. I'm just going to make sure that I'm pretty even for my margins on the right and left hand side. just kind of be able to wiggle that around a little bit. Boy, am I tongue-tied today. So sorry about this, guys. So now I have my swag at the top. I kind of laid it out so I had an idea about where these were going to go, as centered as I could be. I'm adding just a little dot of glue to the bottom of the swag. I really didn't want the whole thing glued straight down. I thought having those kind of zhuzhed up a little bit added to the fact that this is a home decor piece and not a card. For the bow, I didn't want to add that directly over the top because the branches underneath would kind of give it bumps underneath that, and I didn't want that. So I added a circle foam dot just to the center of the bow on the back side of it. Then I can place that over the centerpiece of my swag. Now, of course, you could totally turn this into maybe a 5x7 card or even a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card. One of the reasons I went with this and decided to make it a home decor piece is because I wanted to keep as much of the houses in frame as I could. And it kind of seems to be a pretty busy background once I added in my colors and my splatters. So by giving it a frame, it really helped kind of rein that in a little bit. Now I don't have an easel just yet, but I do plan on going and picking one up so that I can have this placed on my countertop or somewhere in the house to help decorate my home. Now, of course, this is something you can do with any stamps, stencils, dies, anything you make as a card can be turned into a home decor piece. So I hope you kind of think through your supplies, get some ideas, and I hope this has inspired you to create your own custom home decor piece or give as a gift. Thank you so much for joining me today.